Hello, we're going to discuss now some common scenarios which, very surprisingly, SVA cannot deal with, i.e. you cannot express with the semantics of SVA a description of the problem. So this leads into using something called auxiliary code, or some people call this HDL helper code, which, as well as making it easier for the tool to process, i.e. it's more efficient for the tool, it will give you an answer in a shorter time, it also allows us to do something that we could not express using the SVA syntax. Now we're going to discuss a requirement which on the face of it looks a very easy one. If we have a request, then we must have a grant within 2 to 8 cycles. However, the things are slightly more complicated than that in the fact that the requests can overlap, meaning we can make one request and then make another request before we've had the grant for the first request. So there's an overlapping kind of nature to this. Each request must have a corresponding grant, so they must come in pairs, matched pairs. And there shouldn't be a grant for any reason. There shouldn't be a spurious grant. It has to be as a consequence of having made a prior request. So it looks like this is the kind of thing SVA was invented for, describing that. However, what you will find, and try it if you like, is that it's impossible. There is no constructs which allow us to do that. Okay, so you may think, with your SVA knowledge, well, I'll do this then. I will say, at every POSH clock, I have a request. From the next cycle, I wait between 1 and 7 cycles, and then I must observe a grant. So why doesn't this work? Well, if we were to analyse this, it's because of the overlapping nature of requests. So on cycle 1, I make one request. So remember what this property says: at every POSH clock, I have a request. The right-hand side must be true from the next cycle. So on cycle 2, I have a request, therefore the right-hand side must be true. At cycle 5, I make a request, therefore the right-hand side must be true. So if we take, for example, cycle 6, we've had 3 requests, but no grant yet. And yet, because we're not required to, actually. So for the first request, can still expect a grant. So we've got 3 copies of that same property running in parallel, all at different stages of completion. So it's the same, like saying properties are standalone rules. There's no kind of procedural aspect to this. Every cycle at which we have a REQ requires that the right-hand side is true. And that's true at cycle 6. So 3 copies of that, all at different stages of completion. And because we have a range here from 1 to 7 cycles, that single grant actually satisfies all those requests. And clearly that does not capture the behaviour that we said we wanted from the previous slide. So this particular problem, there is no constructs that help you in SVA. The local variables, you may have heard of them, they don't help. You need auxiliary code. There's no alternative. Now, auxiliary code is much more efficient for formal because with these properties, the tool's got to consider all overlapping copies of it. Whereas with auxiliary code, because all it is normal HDL code, there's only one copy of it. There can only be one instance of it. It can't be in multiple different states at a given time. So it's much easier for the tool to evaluate auxiliary code. So here's a similar requirement, not the same, but a similar one. And again, a lot of these come actually from customers asking, how do we solve this problem? So our requirement is every REQ must have an ACK sometime later, and there's a maximum number of outstanding requests allowed, which is 5. The ACK can occur any time, so there is no time limit between making a request and receiving the ACK for it. There's no ACK without a request. So with SVA, as we've seen, we can't solve this. And the general reason that I didn't explain on the previous slide, the reason SVA cannot solve this is because it requires a global count of requests and ACKs. It requires a tally of a global count of requests and ACKs. Okay, you can't do this in SVA, not even with local variables. You can't do this. Just those of you who know about local variables cannot communicate with other kind of threads, if we want to call them that, of the same property. They're local to each instance, and there's no way of communicating their value. That's why you can't do it. So what we need then is auxiliary code. We use auxiliary code to do the counting, and in fact what you find, a lot of auxiliary code, all it is counters, counting things, and setting flags and clearing flags under various circumstances, and then writing simple A implies B properties about the signals in this auxiliary code, not necessarily your design. So we need auxiliary code to do this global counting, and here's an example of such code. So you notice it looks like RTL because it has to pass this synthesis process, creating the mathematical model. So we've got this reg here, 3 elements, and we're calling it NOM handshakes, and our intent here is to use this to count how many outstanding requests do we have, i.e. requests that haven't had an ACK yet. We set that value to 1 at reset. The reason we set it to 1 and not 0 is the fact that we need to know when we've counted backwards, i.e. we've had more ACKs than requests. So because we haven't got to turn this into silicon gates, it doesn't matter. We can just make its initial value 1. So it means this counter can both go up and down with an unsigned value. And then we say if we have a request and no ACK, we increment the number of outstanding requests. If we have an ACK and no request, then we decrement that number, and any other combination of REQ and ACK leaves that number unchanged. An important thing about this as well is choose the minimum size counter you need, because if you just say integer, that means 32 bits, and in formal, there are 2 to the 32 possible combinations that counter can be, so that's going to be tough for the tool. So make it the smallest value that's meaningful, which in our case is 1 more than 5.
That's all we need to count up to. In fact, we didn't need, in fact, it did in this case. We needed those 3 bits in that case. But all we need to do is count to 1 more than 5, because we said we had only 5 outstanding requests permitted. If we have 6, we know we've gone too far. If we get 7 outstanding requests, we must have passed through 6 already. So there's no point, counting how many outstanding requests can we have. All we need to know is, can we get beyond 5? So here's 2 properties. Okay, so. And most people found this very counterintuitive. How can this be the case that I've tested that requirement just with a counter and simple properties which are checking the number of that counter? But in fact, it's true. If you don't believe me, press the pause button and produce a counterexample. Describe an error which these properties would not find. So what we're saying is that at every POSIX clock, we're checking that number doesn't get to 7. Remember, it started at 1. So if it gets to 7, it means we've had 6 requests without a corresponding ACK. And this one says this counter should not reach 0. If it reaches 0, it means at every cycle we're checking this. So if at some cycle we observe the count being 0, it means we've had 1 more ACK than we've had requests, which should never be the case. We shouldn't get an ACK for no reason. So the combination of those 2 properties checks all the scenarios we discussed, and it looks it shocks people the first time they see this, that how can that be true? But in fact, this is the kind of change in mindset you need to make. Please try and become comfortable with it. Now remember, checks without coverage are useless, so what we have to do here is write some cover statements as well, for no better reason than to give us confidence. Okay. So what we'd like to know, or what should be possible, remember that's the question we're asking with a cover statement, is can we go from a stage where we've had the maximum number of outstanding requests to 0 outstanding requests? Remember, num1 represents no outstanding requests. We should be able to see that. And not only do we learn that's possible with that cover statement, we learn the quickest way in which that can happen, because that's what it will show us. So there's a lot of information in this cover statement, and it also gives us confidence that our design is capable of doing all these things. And we can write as many cover statements as we like, all of which should be able to be demonstrated by the tool as a trace. So as we've already seen, SVA can't solve every problem, so a good thing to kind of think before you start writing SVA is, do I need to use SVA here? Often people just hear the word check and their first and only thought is, let's use SVA then. So this typically includes things like timing checks, for example, which can easily be done in just normal Verilog code. There's no reason to go and use SVA. In fact, it makes it much harder to understand and describe even. So one of the things SVA can't do is describe a property which only gets evaluated once. Okay, so for example, if our requirement is from the beginning of verification require A to be high up to and including the first time B occurs, that's a one-off check. Once B occurs, we're not interested in what the relationship of A or B is anymore with regards to this property. So what we can do is go and create some auxiliary code to help us do this. And as I said before, auxiliary code is often just counters and flags. So what we do is clear a flag here. B seen is the name of our flag, and a meaningful name. And if B is true, we set that flag, and notice there's no way of unsetting it other than reset. And what we can say once we have this very simple bit of auxiliary code is that if not B seen, i.e. we haven't seen B yet, this implies A is true. Okay, so notice this property is only enabled when we haven't seen B yet. So in conclusion though, we've shown some scenarios which SVA cannot address by itself, and we need auxiliary code to do that. And hopefully now you're aware of auxiliary code, you consider using it as a matter of course. In formal, then it's very rare to find a problem where you do not need auxiliary code. So auxiliary code is not something you use as an exception. It should be something used very frequently. Okay, so thanks for listening and goodbye.